The most challenging thing that you could face as a female in South Africa these days is to thrive in your hustle, to thrive in your profession, and to actually be seen. How do you rise in as a female in the men's world? And today I have got a great privilege to be speaking with someone who is an expert, who has risen above all the challenges that are facing her. And igama lakhe uDr. Ayanda Kalapiri. So please help me welcome her to All Things Leadership Podcast. Whoa. Thank you so much for saying yes.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. We are in KZN in KwaZulu-Natal.
Yes.
What brings you to KZN as a Johannesburg person?
Sure. Long story, but I'll make it short.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very close-knit family. Very. Think close-knit and then like triple it. Like my mother and her sisters are like this. And when I was getting married, I think that intimidated my ex-husband a lot. So one of the things he insisted on was if we were to get married, we couldn't live in Joburg. He was from outside of the country. So then we looked for a place in Joburg that was similar to where he came from, which was Gaborone, Botswana. And Pietermaritzburg, funnily enough, a job opened up in Pietermaritzburg. I applied for it, and it was similar vibes.
Wow.
Yeah.
No.
So that's how I landed up here.
Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Please just tell us about maybe what has influenced your leadership from a kid. Do you remember those moments that you got exposed to being a leader, maybe at school, maybe at home? What was it like, and what was that experience for you?
So I'm lucky enough to come from a family of leaders, female leaders.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother, typical matriarch, raised 7 children on her own after my grandfather passed away. So just power, the very definition, disciplined, strict. And they all became teachers, my mother and her sisters. Of course, when you say teacher, and they lived in the township, so you already can see the teacher, né? Not necessarily gentle parenting, but more, they really pushed me to achieve, to excel, and I'm the oldest in my generation. So that was always a big thing, that set the bar high, so everybody else will also will come after you, right? Then a lot of my family members were involved in politics as well. So the fearlessness, the stand up for what you believe, what you think is correct, I saw firsthand. My dad was the rector of a university, so where they teach teachers. He was the head of that space.
Oh, yeah.
So I've just always had, I think, access to leaders who are in my immediate environment. So by the time I see people on TV or that kind of thing, leadership in doing because
Sure.
I see it around me all the time.
And how did things rub off for you in terms of what's the biggest way that you've learned? Was it through seeing your family leading, or was it through reading books, or just prioritizing your education?
No, absolutely seeing my family leading, my mother and her sisters. Definitely also prioritizing education because they were educators. You don't have a choice, right?
Yeah.
But to prioritize education. So I think I saw women be very strong, be very dynamic, know how to do power and vulnerability together.
Oof.
And then also because they're very close-knit, those sisters. It's very rare. It's one of the things people often admire about my mother and her sisters. They are very close. So then also learning the idea that you've got to have a support structure, right? If you're going to be strong. Sometimes you're only as strong as the support structure that you have. But my grandmother was formidable, guys. You'd have to meet her. When she died, right, at her funeral, the ladies, her age, got up to talk about how scared they were of doing the wrong thing in front of
Sure,
her. Like
sure.
if you were supposed to come to church, but the one you avoid because of uniform is my grandmother.
Sure.
Yeah. If you're late, the one you avoid, and these are her peers. So I think from her point of view, I'm pretty sure it was because it must have been really challenging in your 60s, 70s to raise abantwana on your own. Because my grandfather passed quite early on. So I think that thing of just trying to keep the family together made her super strong. Wow. And then that just filtered out.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And what are some of the most vulnerable moments that you've seen and learned from how your mom and at home handled things?
Sure. My mother and vulnerability. I think now I have to think about this because she's gonna see this, right? Mm-hmm. So I think I'm only seeing vulnerability with my mom now that I have children. I think she never allowed me to see vulnerability in herself before.
Sure.
I'm going to keep going back to my grandmother. Mm-hmm. The most vulnerable thing I've ever seen my grandmother do was apologize. Sure. Which was like, huh?
Yeah.
You know?
Sure.
She was, if you can think of a king, but woman king. That kind of authority in the family means you never have to admit if you're wrong.
Sure.
And shortly before she died, maybe 2 years before she died, my grandmother sat with me and she apologized.
Sure.
It was very moving about misunderstanding the reasons I'd chosen to leave my marriage.
Sure.
And she just said, I now that I'm looking back, I can see that you made a decision that was right for you.
100%.
Even though for the family, it didn't feel right at the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Huge. Do I want to talk about my marriage, divorce, all of it?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
so
up to you.
I have to tread it very carefully.
Yeah, please do.
Because the father of my children is somebody that I know my children must always love and respect
100%.
beyond now.
Yeah.
So it's a very important story to tell for women, for me. I've been told even at church, people come and tell me, but God says he must tell your story. But it's very important to me. I tell it in such a way that if my children ever see it, they can ask him for his point of view and still be able to hear his point of view.
Yeah.
So I think I followed the pattern of marry your friend. That's what they say. I don't believe in that anymore. I'm not saying it doesn't work for other people. I'm saying it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
They say marry your friend. And the father of my children and I were friends for quite a bit, for like 3 years, 3.5 years. I really thought I knew him very, very well. But I think something happens in marriage when you are together every day. Mm-hmm. And the first 2 years of our marriage, we lived in 2 different countries. So there are things you don't see about each other that you find out after the fact.
Sure.
And I really think there's a story to be told about how when we don't support young boys from an early age who have any kind of learning disabilities, mental issues or challenges, they find ways to manage life. They grow up with the different habits to manage, right? And once you reach a particular point, let's say somdala, and you've managed things in a very particular way, for the survival of you, and then you come across an Ayanda who wants to unpack everything and see everything. And men are not built like that, I don't think. Or rather, we don't raise them that way. We don't raise them to unpack to the point of complete vulnerability.
Sure.
And I was looking for that. That's what I felt would make my marriage work. Yeah. I won't get into what some of the very serious issues were.
100%.
But for me, it was, how do we fix it if you can be vulnerable?
Yeah.
And I don't think that we do enough to raise young boys to be up to men, to be vulnerable, but so that we still see them as men in their vulnerability. So if you ask a man to be vulnerable, you're basically asking him in some ways to stop being a man, in a sense. That was my experience. And so then how do we build something, if I'm wanting something from you, that if you put it on the table, it means challenging everything that you know and feel about yourself, in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. It's much more complex, but I think that's the most respectful way to tell that story.
100%.
At the moment.
I get it. Thanks so much for just sharing
the
story and being vulnerable about it.
Yeah,
You know? So you were raised in a family of educators, and you start having passion to do acting.
Mm-hmm.
From a strict family, what did your mother say?
So it's funny, it wasn't acting originally, it was singing. I was a big fan of Brenda Fassie and Whitney Houston. Huge. We have pictures of me performing at the colleges and universities of my aunts, because my aunts had to babysit me and it. I became like the feature. Imagine, like, right now at the university, if there was like a freshers' ball, but one of the items is this 8-year-old little girl who sings like Brenda Fassie. And so there was a lot of that. And I think in the beginning, because it was, I suppose it looked fun, you know, and it must be nice to be the auntie who's always walking around with the little kid who's coming to perform.
Yeah.
I think initially they thought it was just for fun, but one of them picked up, no, this girl is serious.
Sure.
And to be fair, I thought I was going to do law until matric. So I knew I can sing and I can dance, but I was like, I'm going to do law. And then one day in matric, I was in a production, and we did the production as part of, it was a school production. And then I won the best, and it was the first time I auditioned and was part of a production. Then I win the best actress. And then I'm like, whoa. Hold on. Something is here.
Yeah.
And then I never looked back. My parents insisted that the first 2 years of varsity after matric, I do something that would get me a job.
Yes.
So I did broadcast television at Wits University. So all of your camera work, your editing, your studio work, they were just like, if nothing else, at least be employable at the SABC.
That was wise.
Yeah. And then after that 2 years, and it was the first time they were doing that course at Wits. So we were kind of like the guinea pigs of that course.
Sure.
They were, EFTA was opening up down the road from Wits. So there was this competition of this film school, right? And then after those 2 years.
After.
Yeah. After came, and then it was like, so what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Right? And my parents were like, no, go to Wits. At the time, they thought it was more reputable. I did the 2 years of broadcast television, and then I got into theatre. First year, second year, third year. Really enjoyed myself. I mean, my father himself was an English lecturer. So he was into your literature, your Shakespeare, so it wasn't a wow for him. It was like, oh, look at me, mini me.
Sure.
And then, but eventually I had to, my mom wouldn't support me beyond postgrad. So at Wits, they put in the honors degree into the degree years, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So you don't pass without the honors. It's a 4-year situation. But I got a scholarship. I got the Mandela Rhodes Scholarship for Tango.
Yeah.
Mandela Rhodes Scholarship for my master's. That's how I was able to continue.
Sure.
To do my master's, and also for my PhD, I got a scholarship. My mom got to the point where she's like, "You're right. Either be on TV and we're making money with endorsements, or find a job that's gonna, Not she doesn't say that anymore now. Yeah. Now she's super proud. But then it didn't look like. She thought I was gonna become Lebu Matos, and that was like her fear. Lebu was too free and too.
Wow. And what are some of the challenges that you face as a drama student at university, and have you always desired to be on TV? And then what happened? So
one of the reasons I'm probably not on TV was because I made a conscious decision. My friend and I think we were in honors, got really upset. We'd been going to auditions, but in our industry, it's not regulated. And I'm not at all saying that auditions should only be for people who've gone to varsity. Yeah. That's not what I'm saying. But if you've gone to varsity and you've got the qualification and you're standing in audition line after audition line with anyone who wants to, eventually you start to feel like, so what was the point of my degree, right? Sure. So we started our own theatre company. We made a lot of money with the theatre company, but then slowly, I think there really 2 females and a male. Somebody somewhere needed the money that we were making for a personal challenge, and then we disbanded. Sure. the company, and then we went the route of academia. I've always been smart, and with my family and the education
100%.
background,
Yeah.
that was always going to be an option, if nothing else. But I remember being quite frustrated. Ukuthi simekiwe in Angish again, Angish ukuthi.
Basically, because now I've auditioned for a couple of
and then you're
things.
like, so then what was this degree for? If like you thought Emma go auditioning, but that didn't study, and then they get the jobs, and then surely it's about talent, but then also then what was, there was a sense that I must do something else with my degree then. If it's not gonna be how I get into the industry, then it's gotta open another door for me.
So you would encourage students to start theatre companies?
Absolutely. I think with the current economic climate, I don't see how else. You know what I mean? And there's so many things that theatre can address at the moment, especially socially, especially with young people, with the kinds of challenges that young people are facing. We have such a big gap, you know. I think funding will be the challenge. But I'm hoping, it looks like the winds are shifting slightly with the new minister. You know, we're hoping for the best. But I do think there's no other, that you can't just rely on, although you can make a future out of a theatre career, absolutely. But I do think with the way things look now, it is probably best to start your own production company, to collaborate with other artists in order for you to not do that whole, dry spell, you get work and then nothing, and then work. And for those nothing moments when you still have to pay the rent and you still have to, do what you need to do, then the theatre company work in schools and that kind of thing will help.
So how does it work, like in simple terms?
Yeah.
So right now I'm registering a theatre company,
right.
CIPC, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what's the business?
So for me, the business depends on what it is that you're wanting to do, and I'll explain. And when you start, we're going to assume what's our funding. So depending on which funders you want to focus on, so some people are pro-education. So, and in fact, if you go that route, the social justice route, the social interaction, the social issues route, you're more likely to get funding from an array of funders, right? But I know some people who have started theatre companies specifically to do this set works, right? Because those are not changing. Those are there every year. So you need to just do one run or one season, maybe two, where schools can see that you're dependable, your work is quality work, and then you keep that database of people that you perform for, and then hopefully they spread the word to other schools. So things like set works are usually the best place to start. It's becoming maybe a little bit saturated right now, but it requires, then you must also know. So if you didn't like Shakespeare, for instance, and Hamlet is what the grade 11s are reading, you're going to have to be okay with Hamlet, right? Yeah. But then the other thing is there are a lot of opportunities that aren't necessarily within the arts. So you have to angle your projects in such a way that they are speaking to more than one area. Am I making sense? So the theatre would be then your method or what you bring to the table. But it's always lovely to be able to address more than one thing using theatre skills.
Sure.
So then you can go into your corporate theatre. I'm trying to think. The conventional theatre maker who makes work for the work. Normally things like collaborations, looking for very particular festivals. In some festivals they will fund or support, but you in that case you have to be really passionate.
Sure. And
you have to be really diligent and willing to work before you see the light.
Sure.
To believe that the light at the end of the tunnel is there, and push if it's a passion thing. So if it's a passion project. I know lots of companies who end up being sponsored by big big funders, the lottery. But even that doesn't come overnight.
So you start the work, then you ask for funding.
Absolutely.
I like
absolutely,
that.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
Wow. And do you think we are paying attention to theatre work in this country?
I thought you were going to say, do you think we're paying artists enough? No, you could see my answer was no.
Okay, we're coming to that question.
Your question was, do we pay enough attention to theatre?
Yeah.
Was that it?
Is there enough awareness in the country about theatre?
I think the fairest way to answer that question is there is enough awareness where there is a thriving theatre industry. Like in Joburg, where you have the Market Theatre, you have the Market Lab, you have Sibikwa, thriving, right? You in Cape Town, where you have Baxter, thriving.
Yep.
But in Pietermaritzburg, where we don't have a
we
theatre,
used to. Guys.
where you're talking things like we used to, then that's a different scenario.
100%.
And it's not about the willingness of artists to make work. It's about the willingness of all the support structures to make the industry alive in those spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shame, for someone who is listening and doesn't understand this thing of theatre, what's the importance of telling stories through theatre?
Sure. I think what theatre has that's different from every other medium is the live audience, right? And so for me, I get bias. Whenever I watch a theatre performance and I see ukuthi umuntu didn't push the aspect of the fact that you've got live people in the space, then you've kind of not utilized the medium, right? So for interactive pieces, and I don't mean interactive as in call and response, or even, well, that would work and still works very beautifully. I mean where the piece pulls energy from the audience's response. Right? So those kinds of stories. Stories are important to tell across the globe, obviously. More so in our country because it's so diverse. Because there's so many things we think we are over, but we are not. There's so many pockets. There's so many pockets of our communities that are completely invisible to us. They remain invisible. And the only way you go, oh wow, who's going through something like this, is if you hear a story about them, right? So it's unending how valuable the ability to tell story as a way of awakening us to each other. And we're changing there as we are growing in this democracy or anti-democracy, whatever you want to call what we're doing right now. We're also evolving as people, and we're not always in tune with how far, how wide, how up, how down we are evolving with each other. And stories just keep us up. It's like we know each other through our stories. Oh, okay. I last thought
because we are social beings.
Yes. But Untaga, now his story tells me he's somebody slightly different. And so the value of the live performance, the audience right there in the space, means it's palpable. Their response, the energy to the response. It's like when you go to a concert and somebody's singing. There's a completely different sense than a concert or Ibuga with TV. Same thing with theatre. And the more intimate the space, if that's what the piece needs, the better. You're able to walk away being very clear on what the audience needs more of, if you're looking out and listening out for that kind of thing, what our audiences are responding to, what they like, what they don't like, and then the chatter, the sense of community that happens in the audience themselves during the show, as they're laughing at something or recognizing something or gasping in silence at something, or as they walk out and stuff. I think for me, it's a community building space, and it brings us to an awakeness of each other. Like siyabonana, sawubona. We see each other in theatre spaces in my view. Yeah.
So, that's very profound. Then, how do you survive in a men's world as a lady? You've worked so hard, and to lead a whole department it's a different ball game. And how did you navigate through it all as a female leader in the leadership space?
Sure. I think I have to start with the context that it's not a lie that it's difficult for women in ways that are constructed. As in, it doesn't have to be. It is made difficult. So how do you survive? You don't have a choice but to. So if we are born ukuthi uyayibona le iyenziwe ukuthi ibe nzima for umuntu ofana nami, then you don't have a choice but to start navigating and creating in your mind the map around the things that are purposefully there. It's a different thing if you meet a challenge and nobody knew it was coming. We didn't expect it. But when you can see,
deliberate.
And not shame. I mustn't always. I don't want to say there isn't a boogeyman in the back who's doing it on purpose, doing his things, or a collective. I don't want to say that there isn't. But sometimes it's people in strategic positions not using their power to change systems for those who do not enjoy the privilege of their strategic positions. Sometimes it's that simple. We've inherited a system, Angiti, guys. We know this as a country in almost all industries. The new dispensation after 1994, post-1994, into now, we inherited certain structures and certain things. And for me, the onus is on those who find themselves in the positions that are decision makers to make certain shifts that filter down to not just where they are. And I feel like there isn't enough of that. And when there is that, it's a more you scratch my back, I scratch your back thing, right? So I'll open a space if it's gonna benefit me where I am somehow. And again, again, I want to say it's not that they don't exist. Sometimes there is a deliberate effort, right? But sometimes women who are in those strategic positions themselves are having a hard time because they're women. So in as much as they want to open the space, nabo basa deal na challenges wabo. Hence it starts to look like you scratch my back, I scratch yours, because we're in an environment that was designed with abantu abafana njengathi. It must be that much harder to get to point A and B. If I'm making sense.
Yeah. So now how do you dismantle this whole hierarchy of a system, according to you?
I think I'm going to say something controversial. I think we just do the work. I think you can get exhausted from trying to dismantle and then lose the focus of doing the work.
Sure.
But sometimes the work is not possible unless you dismantle. So it's a dance, right? And for me, this is where spirituality came in. This is where God was super important. Is. Because it's hard for you to figure out, okay, this is a stop and fight moment. Forget what I came to focus on. Or this is a, God will fight this for me. Let me focus on the work.
Sure.
It's very, very difficult to know when and how, because there are also always other politics behind what you're looking at that you don't always know. So I think, especially in a marginalized discipline like theater, as much as possible, do the work. Do the work for the audience that's available. Do the work in the spaces that are available, right? Do the work. And then, if you're not a believer, I could say, pray. A lot of prayer for me, and then collaborate. As you're doing the work, you become exposed to other people who are like-minded, who have skills you don't have, who have connections you don't have. Then you start to collaborate. And usually through those, collaborative spaces, somebody creates an opportunity for someone else. And somebody else you guys were just help. I'll never forget when I started working at the theater that I was running for the last 2 years. How I got to do one of the biggest projects was a colleague who herself was in a very challenging position, but she had access to resources. And she needed her students to be exposed to the kind of skills that were available in my space, but not in hers. And so we had a conversation, and it was, can I bring my students to your space? I spoke to the interns who are also students that I was working with, to other students. Let's create this experience for another group of students coming in, but who don't have the resources and the skill set and exposure to the things you have. And it was huge. And it just came from that collaboration, that network. She had resources that I didn't have, and then we both had them. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Power of collaboration.
So, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yo, let's move to your thesis. What does...
I might not stop talking.
Let's learn a little bit about your thesis.
I might not stop talking.
Break it down, man. I think it's a very interesting topic for us to learn from.
Me too. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. So I looked at intimacy. intimacy and pedagogy. What pedagogy is basically is teaching and learning. It's just a fancy word for saying the art or the science of teaching and
pedagogy.
Learning. Pedagogy.
Jesus.
Yes. So
I pedagogy.
So I was looking at intimacy, closeness, connectedness, whether that's physical, spiritual. And it's important that I make that distinction because for a long time at the beginning of my study, when I said intimacy, people because they think I'm only going to look at scenes where people kiss each other and I was like, no, I'm talking about something conceptually wider than that. And the argument I was making is that theater work itself generates a sense of intimacy, whether you want it to or not, whether you're cognizant of it or not. We build a relationship with audience. The actors on stage build a relationship with the audience. In that 5 minutes, 10 minutes, hour, you get engrossed in their world. You share feelings, ideas, thoughts, journeys. Same in the teaching space is what I was saying. And now where it came from was some years ago, there was just a whole lot of stories that came out of the university space of sexual harassment that was happening in the rehearsal space of the theater classroom specifically, right? So in the theater spaces at the universities, the rehearsal, there where we're playing with things, where the magic is made, that's where the sexual harassment was happening the most. And I was a victim of sexual harassment by a university staff member when I was a student. And when I did my PhD, I'd found out that rehearsal was a common denominator. And for me, what is significant about rehearsal, it's where that intimacy happens way more than in any other spaces because we're playing, right?
Yeah.
And then we're self-disclosing, we're revealing things about each other to each other that we otherwise wouldn't say. So for the development of your character, or let's say we're playing family members and we are not normally, we would get to know things about each other and that we would not talk about in any other circumstance.
True.
So the closeness, and then also the sort of the activities that a director will do with their cast is to build connectedness and ensemble. And when we ask you to go down memory lane and use a memory of yours, or to imagine yourself in the future, what you would like, and then impart that into the character, or into the story, we are going into spaces of your psyche, into spaces of your family history. We become quite connected, quite close, quite quickly, right? Which then became this fresh ground, if I can put it in that really not so nice way, for people who are predatory in their thinking.
Sure.
And then we have a lot of also what happens in rehearsal is confidential. Because very often the things that come out in a rehearsal are things we don't really want people who weren't there to know. 100%. They're not like secret, but they came out in such a vulnerable space, in such a space of connectedness, in such a context-based space, that why would you go and talk about it with somebody else? Let's say I reveal that my uncle did something that I didn't like. It might not be hectic, but it's my story. And story. And then the cast will use it for whatever they use it for. So because rehearsal asks of the actors to be vulnerable, that's just what we do when we play, right? We go into the vulnerable parts of each other. We self-disclose. We tell people, we show people things about ourselves that we normally wouldn't.
Sure.
Sometimes complete strangers, but for the season of the theater piece, we are not strangers. We're brother and sister. We're whatever the script is calling us to be, right? There's that self-disclosure, then there's the partner responsiveness. That's very important. That's how you build intimacy. So I tell you things about me, or I show you things about me that I didn't even know sometimes, or that you didn't know. And then your responsiveness is empathy, or you're safe with me.
Yeah.
Then the cycle keeps going. We keep building intimacy and more intimacy, and we become closer and closer and closer as a group, right? So I was going, there's a curriculum there about intimacy. But then I was complicating it. As in South Africa.
Sure.
South Africa, people in South Africa understand intimacy in a very specific way. So I went all the way back to, this was me conceptualizing intimacy. I went all the way back to apartheid South Africa. How we were policed, right? Who you could be close to was policed. Where you lived was policed. I can't intimacy, physically, spiritually, psychologically. who you could worship with was policed, right? Who you could sleep with, you could have children with. So that the government hand was in how you're being intimate, right? And then if you look at our cultures, right? Before you and your boyfriend can love each other, someone is always in the intimacy. It's not just you and me. There's always another hand. And then HIV came. Then they were telling us how to relate with each other because of HIV. Add a condom. Then there was COVID. COVID, how close can you be? So intimacy is constantly being mitigated by some other person between people, right? Then we had the big trials, your Jacob Zuma trial, just before he was president, right? With the where he was accused and then later on acquitted of rape, and the way there was a court case outside of the court case, revealing what we think is allowed in intimate relationships, what we think people should know, what we as an audience feel entitled to know. So then I contact intimacy for us as South Africans, very particular. Very particular.
It's very unique. You know what I'm thinking about?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about you know how people were isolated to go and live in townships?
Yes.
And then ubampintshe khona, so that there is no life there.
But then you're also forcing the
community, the over closeness,
and the community at the same time.
But you know what's crazy?
Yeah.
Mina ekhaya, I meet we are four abantu esihlangana empompini khona. So they've got their own tap, we've got our own tap, they've got their own tap, they've got their own tap. The conversations that happen here, they are building community where it was supposed to be, where we were supposed to be dismantled.
There we go.
I think it's a crazy thing.
There we go.
Okay, Quebec.
So yeah, but uhamba nami when I paper lam songathi ulifundile but ufundile engakalibhali. So but it was about how we understand closeness and connectedness in a very unique way to the rest of the world. And only now are we starting to see each other as humans. That's still about connectedness, right? Now we've got this gender-based violence thing that's still keeping us ish. So it's like now we're starting to get to know each other racially, but now gender-wise, we don't know each other anymore, or we never did, or so
we knew each other during apartheid because it seemed like there was like one common enemy.
So it's very important though that during apartheid all this gender-based violence stuff was still there, but it was not the important fight. The important fight was the enemy that we all agree is our enemy.
True.
Yeah.
In fact, might have been worse, actually.
Yeah, because it was
condoned.
Yeah.
It was something that was condoned in GBV.
Yeah, there we go.
Because I lived in that space as well. You know, where it seemed right to abuse another person, and because you're a male, and
many people still live in that space now, unfortunately.
Okay, let's qhubeka this is ngiyayithanda.
So I then it's important also to say that some systematic challenges at my university meant that my study was delayed significantly.
Intimacy.
Yeah, significantly delayed. And then, so the people who ended up participating in the study were people who were different from who I originally had asked. So originally, what the university I was at did at the time, when all these stories started popping up back in 2012, they created a committee, right? And they started drawing up a policy on sexual harassment. And there was a reporter who wrote a story and went and basically found all the people who had a story to tell about this sexual harassment that was happening in the drama department specifically. And so initially, those were the people that I wanted to be the participants in my research. I wanted people who had been students of theater and so understood vulnerability, rehearsal, connectedness from the point of view of being a student, but then who are now also lecturers or practitioners in an educational space. So now I'm going, now that you are the one with the power,
what are you doing with the power?
Intimacy is also about power. Now that you're the one with the power, right? How is it playing out in this kind of space? And not as a way to like catch you out, but as are we thinking about it? Have you noticed any patterns? Is there anything that you understand now that you didn't understand before? Is there, are you approaching your teaching or your rehearsal practice, or your teaching students how to engage with each other, is it influenced at all by the experience you went through?
Sure.
Because I felt that mine was, it really was. But the participants changed altogether.
Sure.
Then there was 2020 in the middle.
Yeah.
So then I got the same criteria sort of participants, people who had been students of theatre at university and who are now teaching theatre at university, but not necessarily who had been part of that initial sexual harassment story. And then what I found out was how hard it was to be a Black female within the theatre industry, educational in that context in South Africa.
Sure.
That was a whole other space where Black females were finding it incredibly difficult to just be.
Sure.
Like working around policies. The transformation policies in universities ended up being some of the most problematic things, or the cause of some of the most problematic things that women were experiencing at universities as Black women. Transformation, the policy. There was this sense that you are now responsible for it. Funny, you're not the one who needs to transform, but you are responsible for the transformation of this entire
person.
thing. But also of the entire,
Sure.
And if it doesn't work, there's something you're not bringing to the table, right? And then the constant having to prove yourself. You say you've got the expertise, prove it.
Sure.
Right? There were stories of other professors, lecturers belittling openly to students. Ama course outlines were some of these research participants. Ufuku professor Ati, I'll never forget the one story that the one lady told me. Ati, this professor, renowned professor, known in the university, respected as a theatre maker, ebuga i-course guide yakhe, athi, wazinlo, angafundisa into nje, only so and so, abiza some name of a famous person, only so and so can teach this, and then the sense that you had to validate, why are you teaching this? The sense that Black material, and I'll call it that loosely, was absent tina maskula with these theatre spaces, right? But Masas Funugu introduced us through decolonization, which, by the way, I have real gripes with the terminology. Masses with our own work. There's also the same people who in conferences look like they're decolonial. Underneath the surface, when you want to bring in not just the name of the work, but also the methods of collaboration, of respect for indigenous ways of doing things, of the Black imagination, not the one of Cinderella, It's like, but why? No one can relate. So you're constantly fighting this battle to make work in a place
where you're supposed to be supported.
You're supposed to be able to make that cutting edge, decolonial, for lack of a better word, transformative work. You are still needing to work through situations where you're constantly being made the infant. A lot of them also were coming out of universities to then take up positions next to people who had taught them. People who had taught them of a different race. So all of a sudden, that paternal, if that's the right word, relationship of you're just a child that you thought was okay when you were a student, you're realizing continues even when you're a colleague. Where you have to keep now, why do you want to do that? And then also the asking of our students who come from your rural and township areas to forget who they are when they come into the space. Because their stories are not palatable or they...
In your world.
Yeah, they don't have academic... And then having to be the one to create, go in econ, but it's in a fight as opposed to... And then having people use your Blackness and your femaleness to tick boxes. Ngena kule project. Now we can report back to the powers that be who gave us the money. Look, but once you're in the institution, do you have the support to be the self that they're advertising that you are.
Sure.
No. But the fact that you are black and female is working for the funding that's coming in there. But the struggles you have as a black and female, no one's there. It's like, girl, we made it. Now we're fugoza. Fugoza zobona now. Which I think for me is very unfortunate. It's that thing, I'm going back to that, where you're in a space of privilege and you can make decisions to open up spaces for those who are not in those spaces. But now ama battles wako.
Sure.
What does it start creating between black women?
A rift.
Competition, contempt. Because instead of being able to collaborate and help and work with one another, you are fighting your own battles that then look to your sisters, if I can put it that way. I also don't like that terminology, but for now, right? Like how, and you're not, because we are but now we are vegan.
Sure.
I always say, whatever's left of the war of apartheid, Hashem is playing itself out in higher education. Come see. Hashem. Trenches.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yo. And you seem like a person who has, you fought your way throughout as you were growing up as a kid, obviously having a supportive family, going for your dreams, but also your dreams being challenged, in the workspace and all those things. There could be a person out there who's sitting at home who has had maybe similar challenges. Even some people have tapped out, because of it burnout and because of the struggle that happens in the workplace and stuff like that. What would you say to that person and encourage them right now? You can just look at that camera.
Sure. I'd say, first of all, that I recognize that it's not easy, that it's very difficult, that when people give advice, they often have not experienced everything in your context. That said, from my own point of view, what has helped me a lot is to have the support of my faith. I have the kind of relationship in my faith space with God where I take things to God. Perhaps that's not your faith space, but there's something that you have from where you draw your strength. It could be your child, it could be a project in your community that inspires you. It could be pushing to be the first one in your family too. Keep nurturing the thing that nurtures you back. Keep pay attention to the thing. Try and nurture that as much as possible. Don't be too hard on yourself, but also don't be too easy. Don't be too easy on yourself. Don't be, don't discipline. Discipline is a huge one, and discipline is different things for different people. But try and be somebody who's disciplined in terms of your own values, your own trajectory, where you want to go. Yeah, and as much as possible, feed the thing that gives you go. That's what I'd say. That's
powerful. Lastly, how do people get a hold of you if you like to share contacts, or you're a social media person, you're a theater person?
I am social media-ish. Like I have the platform, but like when last did I literally have to check what my handles are. Sorry, I'm there all the time. So on Facebook, I'm Ayanda Kala.
Yeah.
On TikTok also, Ayanda Kala. There was a funny thing that happened with the surname. So I kept it after the degree for my children because that's their surname. But you will find many of my platforms after the fact are back to just Ayanda Kala. Even on Twitter, I think I'm Ayanda _ not Twitter, X. Ayanda _ Kala.
Yeah, can solve the X.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for just taking time to come and chat with us. I learned a lot.
Thank you.
I learned a lot, especially about intimacy, about don't be too hard on yourself, and also don't be too easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the challenges that you guys face. You are really like a true inspiration, and looking forward to more episodes with you. Yay. This was just part 1.
Yeah.
Thank you.